Welcome to Chapter 7 and Week 7 of Introduction to Business. This week, we're talking about leadership. What makes a good leader? What makes a poor leader? I think we've all been in the situation where we've had a good leader or a bad leader, a good boss or a bad boss. What are the attributes that make up a good leader? This week, we'll examine those attributes and skills, as well as taking a look at some other items as far as management is concerned with organizations. So, this week in Chapter 7, Week 7, we're going to hopefully, you're going to be watching this lecture video, which you are now. I'd like you to follow along in PowerPoint. We're going to have a homework assignment. We're also going to talk about a SWOT analysis and why it's an important part of the organization to analyze, to take a situational analysis and perform a SWOT analysis. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But you're going to have a homework assignment where you're going to actually complete a SWOT analysis. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, as part of your attendance grade, I'd like you to participate in a discussion with me and your classmates as far as a time in your life where you've had a good leader. What made them good? What made that boss so good? What were the attributes that we specifically talked about in this lecture that they had? Tell me about it. And, I think you'd be surprised that maybe you haven't really thought about it, but it's a good opportunity to reflect on what makes a good leader, and it's a good way for you to develop and prepare yourself to be a leader within an organization. So again, that's the homework and the assignments for this week. So let's jump right into the lecture. So, managers' roles are evolving today, and this is even more so with the pandemic. And we have to be a little bit more prepared to get creative with our leadership and communicate well, right? And today's managers need to be collaborative, right? They tend to be collaborative. This is a little bit harder with people meeting through Zoom and online, and this takes a lot of skill. But good leaders also emphasize teams and team building. You know, a good check of a poor leader is if you hear them talking and they use the word I a lot. I am doing this. I am doing that. That's not good leadership. There's no I in team, right? That is a saying, and a staple of good leadership is working in teams and emphasizing teams and team building, because there's nothing that creates a little bit of animosity and just dissent among your workers than using the word I and I and I instead of we. Good leaders also guide, train, support, motivate, and coach employees. That's important. Even if they don't have the right answers, what they can do is help teach and guide them along the way in the best way they think is possible. They also need to be skilled communicators, and they need to be team players. If you have a leader that is not a team player, it's not going to work, right? One of my favorite sayings is about leadership, and it was from a professor that I hold very near and dear to my heart from when I was in school, and she was a fantastic professor. And I remember she was teaching a leadership course, and she told me, Sean, good leaders don't demand respect; they earn it, right? And if you think about good leaders, they don't demand respect; they don't have to. They earn respect, and you respect them because of what they do. And that's something to keep in mind. And that's something I keep in mind, even though it's 20 some years later after that class, and I still remember Professor Wingbug, Professor Swanson saying, it's good leaders don't demand respect; they earn it. So I want you to remember that. Good leaders are also skilled communicators, and they're also prepared. They're also globally prepared. And what I mean by globally prepared is within the organization. They know enough about the other departments, and they are prepared to have a lot of conversations with other departments and other people, and they're able to empathize with other organizational functions and understand what's going on. And if they don't understand what's going on, they take the time to learn. They take the time to try to understand what's going on. So those are all all traits of good managers today. The four top functions of management: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And let's dive into each one of these four areas and what managers do. Well, planning. Planning is important from a leadership perspective because you're the person setting plans and setting organizational goals into effect. You have to help develop those strategies to reach those goals. The buck stops with you, so to speak, when you're in charge. You're not looking for answers from somebody else within your department. You're helping to establish those strategies and establish what those organizational goals are. You're also determining the resources needed to reach those goals. So that's important too. And you're also setting the standards of those individuals and what it's going to take. Standard operating procedures and standard operating guides to help you reach those goals. It's a very important aspect. Organizing. Allocating resources, assigning tasks, and establishing procedures for accomplishing goals is an important aspect of what managers do. Preparing a structure, showing the lines of authority and responsibility. Recruiting, selecting, training, and developing employees is also very important. And then also placing employees where they're going to be most effective. Finally, controlling is another important thing. And no. Don't read that and say, oh, I've had one of those controlling managers. It's not what I mean by controlling. Controlling means analyzing results and taking a look at things and measuring those results against what those goals are, and then working to take corrective action when there is something not right. So it's important that we analyze that, and when we look at controlling, it's not what you may think it is. So when we take a look at planning, the first part, planning and decision making, usually with an organization, planning starts with outlining two things: a vision statement and a mission statement. A vision statement is more than a goal. It's an encompassing explanation of why the organization exists and where it's trying to go as a company. It's more than a mission statement. It's more of where they're trying to go and what they're trying to do. Whereas a mission statement is kind of like a North Star. It's an outline of the fundamental purposes of an organization. So basically, it's a question, it's a guiding light, it's a North Star of, okay, am I doing something, and is this procedure, is this thing going to hold up to what we hold ourselves accountable to as an organization? It's their self-concept. It's the philosophy of a company. It's what we need to do to survive long term. It's what the customer needs, and it's the social responsibility of that company and the nature of the products and services. And I think if you look at a lot of organizations, mission statements, you'll find some really interesting ones here. And let's take a look. Mission statement, McDonald's, for example. The mission statement for McDonald's is, our mission is to make delicious, feel-good moments easy for everyone. This is how we uniquely feed and foster our communities. We serve delicious food people feel good about eating with convenient locations and hours and affordable prices, and by working hard to offer the speed, choice, and personalization our customers expect. At our best, we don't just serve food, we serve moments of feel-good, all with the light-hearted, unpretentiousness, welcoming, dependable personality consumers know and love. So while you may laugh, it's actually a great mission statement, right? It's the organization's self-concept of how they see themselves. They're not serving burgers. They're making the world a better place and making lives more enjoyable and fun, right? It's their philosophy as an organization. You may laugh, but it's their philosophy of an organization. I'm betting if any of you have had a job at McDonald's, they've preached this over and over again. It talks about their long-term survival. It does. If you look back at that, if you look back at that statement, it talks about the long-term. Uh, it talks about long-term, right? It's how we're going to get. It's how we're going to grow, right? It's it's how we're going to foster our communities. It's how we're going to uh, uh, basically grow as a company. Social responsibility, it talks about the community. It talks about being a pillar in the community. I think that's pretty interesting too. It specifically talks about the community and and basically serving the community, right? It talks about fostering communities, so that checks the box. And then finally, the nature of the product or service. Of course, it talks about the nature of the product and service a lot in there. So I think McDonald's is a great example of a good mission statement. So when we talk about the second step, the planning and decision making, right? The goals are the broad long-term accomplishments of an organization, whereas the objectives are more specific short-term statements detailing how to achieve the organizational's goals. If you think about it, goals are the long-term effect, and the objectives are more of the short-term, you know, short-term tactics results to make up the goals. So back in the early '80s and back in the '70s, obviously, we talked a lot about an analogy to do with war. You've heard the analogy of war. To win the war, you need to win the battles, right? Winning battles makes up winning the war. So if you think about it that way, winning specific short-term objectives is going to help you reach your goals as an organization. So think of it that way. Think of the objectives as micro conversions and that goals as macro conversions. So, planning with fundamental questions. What's the situation now? Before you want to before you know where you need to go, you gotta before you get to where you go, you need to know where you are now, right? It doesn't matter if you're driving somewhere. It doesn't matter that you're planning an organization. You need to know where you're at now to know how to get to where you want to go, because you may be at different points, and you have to work to get to where you want to go. So how do we do this? Well, situational analysis is an important aspect of it, right? It's a planning tool used to analyze an organizational strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So how can we get to our goal from here? Strategic planning, tactical planning, operational planning, and or contingency planning, right? So before we get into those four areas and talk about planning, let's talk a little bit about a SWOT analysis, because this is your homework assignment. I want you to look at an organization and put together a SWOT analysis for me. And I want you to format your homework assignment should look a lot like this slide. This is a SWOT analysis grid matrix. This is called a SWOT matrix. Strengths and weaknesses, right? Opportunities and threats. Now, strengths and weaknesses, when you're talking about strengths and weaknesses of an organization, it's internal. It's internal. Opportunities and threats are in the marketplace, meaning external. So when you think about strengths and weaknesses, think about internal things. And when you think about opportunities and threats for a company, you're talking about the external. Strengths, key competencies that your company has. These are important things. Cost advantages, better advertising campaigns, good department, right? Weaknesses. Maybe you guys don't have maybe the company doesn't have a clear direction. Maybe they have obsolete facilities, a weak market image, damaged image, too narrow of a product line. And then when we look outside as far as opportunities and threats, opportunities are our ability to serve additional markets and groups, expandable product lines, and threats may be competitors, slower growth in the market, regulatory cost issues, um, supply issues, all sorts of different things that are external, meaning that they're outside forces affecting you. So that's important. So your homework assignment is choose company of your choice and try to identify 3 or 4 of each of these, right? And I'd like you to set it up just as you see here in this matrix style. Great. So now we got that out of the way. Let's talk a little bit about forms of planning and planning functions, right? So the broad stroke of this is strategic planning is a setting of broad long-range goals by the top managers, whereas tactical planning are short range, specific objectives by lower level managers. Remember, we were talking about this a little bit up here as far as what are the difference between goals and objectives. Well, strategic planning is more of the big picture goals of an organization, whereas tactical planning are more of the small objectives that are going to lead towards the bigger goal. So the bigger goal may be strategic planning, may be to increase profitability of a company by 10%, or to raise revenue from 700,000 a year to 800,000 a year. All right. What are the tactics that we're going to take to help reach those strategic goals? Right. Tactics may be stuff like campaigns, advertising campaigns, maybe a PR initiative, maybe a word of mouth or a referral campaign or something those lines. You see how the two differ, right? Next is operational planning. And operational planning is the setting of work standards and schedules. It's more focused on uh, uh, the things needed to reach the tactical objectives. So it's more about efficiencies and operating to help reach those tactical goals. And then finally, the last one is contingency planning. Contingency planning is preparing an alternative course of action if things don't work out. So these are all important functions of management, is to help build a plan using all forms of planning. So when we talk about decision making or finding the best alternative, decision making is choosing among 2 or more alternatives, right? And how do we do that? Well, the rationale decision making model says, 1, we identify and define the situation. What's going on? Defining the situation to the group that's working on this is an important aspect to truly understand what is going on. To do that, we need to describe and collect the needed information. That's the second step. So we're defining the situation and collecting all the information that we have that defines that situation. Next, we're going to develop ideas or alternatives to figure out what decisions could possibly help the situation. Then we're going to decide between the alternatives which one is best, execute that alternative, and then follow up on it and measure the results of that to see if it's a good decision or a bad decision. So that's rational decision making, right? Now, problem solving is the process of solving the everyday problems that occur, less formal than decision making, and usually calls for quicker action. So it's a little bit different than decision making. Problem solving techniques include brainstormings, listing all the pluses for a solution in one column, and then all the minuses. It's meant to be a quick action, whereas decision making is more of a strategic, longer term process. So keep that in mind. Now, organizing your organization. When we talk about organizing your organization, we talk about management levels. At the top of the company is top management, the highest level, and this consists of the president and other key company executives who develop the strategic plans, not the tactical plans, but the strategic goals of the organization. Middle management They're, including general managers and other level managers, they're the ones that are responsible for tactical planning to help achieve those strategic goals. Now, that doesn't mean that the top level shouldn't help out as far as tactical planning. They should have a working understanding of the tactics to help achieve those goals. Because what good leader is going to be able to establish a strategic goal without knowing any of the tactics to help get you there? Finally, we have supervisory management. Those are directly responsible for those workers that are executing those tasks and those tactics, right? It's important that efficiencies are followed up on and efficiencies are taken care of. So it's important that the supervisors are following the plan that middle management and top management are putting into play. And if you had to look at levels of management, this would be a good demonstration or a good visual of how this looks in an organization. It looks a little bit like the pyramid. Top management exists of the C-suite. CEO, I'm sure you've heard this term. That's an acronym for Chief Executive Officer. They're the one that is in charge of the organization. You have the Chief Operating Officer or COO. They implement the CEO's changes. Chief Financial Officers obtains the funds, plans budgets, collect funds. They're in charge of the budgeting and the financial aspect of the company. And then the Chief Information Officer or CIO is in charge of the infrastructure or the technical aspect of the company and helps get the right information to the right people so decisions can be made. So now there's tasks and skills at each level of management, right? And it's important that top managers, middle managers, and supervisors have different skill sets that complement where they are within the organization and what their role within the organization is. And those skills fall into one of three categories: technical skills, which is the ability to actually perform the tasks in a discipline or department; human relation skills, what I'd like to call management skills, people management skills, right? The ability to communicate and motivate. And then finally, conceptual skills. This is the ability to picture the organization as a whole and the relationship among its various parts. So when we talk about what skill sets each level needs, let's talk about the C-suite or the top managers. They don't need to have a ton of technical skills, but they need to have a little bit of technical skills to understand what is going on and to set objectives, to set goals, company goals, that they know that tactics that the middle managers can help come up with can help them reach those goals. They also have the need to have a good amount of human relation skills. They need to be able to motivate. They need to be able to train. They need to be able to mentor other individuals below them. And then finally, conceptual skills. Conceptual skills are very important. They need to be able to picture the organization as a whole and how they fit into the overall pie or overall piece of the organization. Middle managers, you can see, they need to have a good mixture of all three. Finally, first line managers. They need to make sure that they have more technical skills, more than the human relation and conceptual skills. So, for leading, leaders must communicate a vision and rally others around that vision, establish corporate values, promote corporate ethics, embrace change, and stress accountability and responsibility. Good leaders are transparent. They present the company's facts and figures in a way that's clear to all their employees. And it's a very important part of leadership. Now, there's three different main leadership styles. And I think if you go over these, you could probably say, okay, I've had a leader that is one of these, right? An autocratic leadership, these individual leaders make managerial decisions without consulting others. They more tell people what their plans and what they need to do. A democratic or participative leadership, managers and employees work together to make decisions. And this is important. This is kind of the middle ground and something that you want to have. And then finally, free reign leadership. These managers set objectives, and employees are free to do whatever they need to do to accomplish those objectives. Also, leaders need to empower workers. Progressive leaders give employees the authority to make decisions on their own without consulting a manager. Customer needs are handled quickly, and managers' roles become less of boss and more of coach. Enabling, you probably have heard this in a negative term, but this is a good term when it comes to leaders. Enabling gives the workers the education and tools they need to make decisions. So that's an important aspect of it. Knowledge management is finding the right information, keeping the information in a readily accessible place, and making the information known to everybody in the firm. This tries to keep people from reinventing the wheel. So knowledge management is also another important part of good leadership. Finally, after you put it all together, how do you measure the results of the organization, right? And the organization's output. Well, that's where controlling comes in, making sure it works. The control function measures the performance relative to the planned objectives that are leading up to this overall strategy. Rewards for people for work well done, and it takes a necessary corrective action for those. A key criteria for measurement: customer satisfaction, right? Pleasing employees, stakeholders, which stakeholders could be employees, basically everybody that a company touches, and then also the customer. So pleasing people is an important aspect of customer satisfaction. So that's it for Chapter 7. Stay tuned for next week. Next week, I'll give you some more details, but next week is our midterm examination. So until next week, make sure that you complete the homework assignments assigned.